Welcome back. Okay, did you end up buying Diablo 4 on launch? And if so, did you just not play it? Right? Because loads of people, they got Diablo 4, they played the initial campaign. Season 1 came out, Season 1 was kind of a load of balls. Season 2 was way better, but for so many people, they literally own the game, and there hasn't really been an amazing reason to pick up the game again. Now, the most recent thing we had been talking about was Season 4. Even in the title of that video, like, we were making it clear that Blizzard have they've given up on some of the launch design of the game. They had given up on even giving Season 4 like its own sort of in-universe, like heavily themed title or even a unique mechanic. Instead, it's just called Loot Reborn, and the long and the short of it is, they want to fix up loot. Season 4, rather than having some crazy big, like, ooh, it's vampires this time, it is just trying to fix up the game. I thought that was fairly interesting, and we were seeing a lot of pretty damn positive talk from people who generally have been like very fair and even-handed with the game. I thought it was time to actually jump in, because I am also one of those people who bought Diablo 4 on launch, played it, and just very rapidly hit level 50 and went, I don't want to do this grind, and then I left. So I'm exactly the sort of player the Blizzard would want to be targeting. Now, before I talk about the changes that have been made in my experience, it's always good when we can check in on some nice numbers. Okay, so Diablo 4 is on Steam. It also pretty notably is on Game Pass, and recently they said that the Game Pass cohort is like, I think one of or the largest playing Diablo 4, so I suppose while yes, Path of Exile is a massive game, ultimately with D4, a bit like how, so many people objectively do play Ubisoft games, right? Like Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Absolutely humongous player numbers, but you don't really see a lot of that on Twitch. You don't really see a lot of that on Steam, because for so many of those people, it's just happening in console. So there is this entire Game Pass-sized, lump, and we have no idea how many people are actually, they're playing it on Game Pass. I mean, we know Game Pass itself is just north of 30 million subscribers. That's 30 million people with access to the game, so maybe there's something there. The game itself, D4, launched on Steam to not the best. I think shortly after launch, it was at about 58%. Now, you might think, oh my god, that doesn't sound like a Blizzard game. When you think Blizzard game, you obviously think of Overwatch 2 with its lovely all-time Steam rating of 18%. And a lot of the reason why there is, after Season 1, they quickly made changes, and Season 2, the TLDR from a lot of people playing Season 2 was, this should have been what Season 1 was. Why did the game release the way that it did? People would have been so much happier if it was just like this. So, the all-time reviews for D4 are 70%, and the recent reviews for D4 are 77%, which is pretty good, right? It's moved up about 20 points since its launch. Another game that has done that too is Overwatch 2, but its launch was, its all-time is 18%, and its recents are 35%. That being said, there is a notable Chinese component there, where the only way that loads of Chinese players could actually say, hey, we're angry we can't play Overwatch anymore, of course, when all that stuff got pulled out of China, a lot of them found the only way that they could express that was by leaving a negative Steam review. If you take a look at those Overwatch reviews, you can look at the language drop down, and you can see there's a lot of reviews that are in Chinese. But okay, let's talk about the Season 4 launch then. So here's one graph, and I think you can see that the line is going up. You're looking at numbers about 2,200, right, on a daily basis. We are now seeing that raise up to peak numbers of about 30,000 on Steam, and averages that are well over like 10, 15,000. So essentially, they 10x their numbers from the tail end of Season 3 to the start of Season 4. That is objectively very strong performance, right? But you might be asking, okay, can we compare that to another launch? Yes, we can. So, to take a look at the Season 3 launch, you can basically see it was peaking at about 15,000 people. Now, Season 3's launch was weird because the new mechanic they added was heavily criticized. Then, within a handful of days, the dev team basically completely turned it around to the point where people were they were pretty much saying, hey, we don't want this feature to leave the game after the season. So they did turn things around, but obviously 15,000 peak, 30,000 peak. 2x, right? So Season 4 is producing 2x the numbers of Season 3. That is undeniably a pretty strong result. And if we think about what's driving that, well, one part will of course be social media. Looking at all of my regulars, you've got Riker, you've got Darth microtransaction, right? Like those would only be my sort of main two, go-to guys when it comes to ARPG content. So a lot of content coming out from those guys that is broadly a lot more positive. And of course, whenever I say this content is positive, this content is negative, what it actually is them sharing their honest opinion, and it just so happens that they're liking the changes that they're seeing. And that does bring me on to one of the challenging things in this big sphere of game punditry. People might know you, they might find you because you made a video criticizing a bunch of things about a game, and then they will kind of assign that opinion to you. And then when you change, it's like, oh my god, he was negative. Now he's positive. Shill. I would say it's more that the underlying facts change, therefore my opinion changes. And we will get to the parts of D4 Season 4 that I don't think are a win. Spoilers. Battle Pass. Cosmetics. Anyway, to take a look at Twitch, though, I basically wanted to take the highest average within launch week, and what that basically was for Season 3 was 29k, and for Season 4 it was 49k. So we are basically seeing far better numbers for Season 4. We're also seeing far better player sentiment. You might be wondering then, why? Why? How have they done this? Well, let's go talk about that. So they've added two new systems to the game. One is called tempering, the other one is called masterworking. So here's the core of tempering, right? When you're playing the game, you will get these things called tempering manuals. Tempering manual is the thing that you'll use to temper your gear. Now, a manual is something that is unlocked, right? So it's not a consumable item. The way it works when you go to a blacksmith is you decide, okay, hello, Mr. Blacksmith, I want to go and temper a piece of gear. You will then select the piece of gear. When you've done that, based on the manuals that you've unlocked, you can select what manual you want. Now, a manual will have a list of different affixes, and whenever you temper your gear, one of those affixes will be put onto your piece of gear. Although if you end up having like an ancestral legendary, you can actually temper 2 onto them. Now, the way that works then is you can reroll up to 5 times, and this is basically a way for people to target and tune the affixes that are on their bits of gear. So it's basically giving people more control. The next system down is masterworking. Now, this can only be done on a fully tempered ancestral legendary or unique, and basically whenever you masterwork a piece of gear, it buffs affixes. You can masterwork something 12 times, it costs materials and gold, and most tiers of masterworking buff all your affixes by 5%. Some tiers buff only one affix by 25%, which obviously could be pretty good if it's an affix you really care about, and affixes themselves can be buffed multiple times. So you can really see that between tempering and masterworking, yes, there will be some RNG, there will be some gambling through your resources, but you can have a piece of gear that is absolutely cracked, really good for whatever build you're currently going with. Now, this can be a pretty expensive process in terms of gold. Blizzard have actually said they're looking into that, and they might be increasing the ways that people can earn gold. The next thing then, legendary aspects. So the aspects, they're basically just the cool things that your gear can do. And in the old system, you would unlock aspects into your codex by basically clearing dungeons. And then what you could do is you could apply an aspect to a piece of gear based on the stuff unlocked in your codex. But there was a trade-off, and that trade-off is that all of the aspects in the codex, they would be applied at their lowest roll. So the way that the aspects work, of course, is an aspect could, make you do 50 to 75% more damage to your big slash on a Tuesday. Let's just say that that's the bullshit affix I've made up. So it could roll between 50 and between 75. And it would always be the lowest one if you applied that from your codex. What's really good now, though, is whenever you get a legendary and you scrap it, that legendary's aspect gets yoked into your codex. And it gets yoked into your codex at whatever quality, like whatever roll it is. So if you get a god roll on a piece of gear, right, like it's an aspect that you want and it's a really, really good roll, it's like at the high range. If you scrap that piece of gear, your codex will get that good version of the affix. So this is way nicer, way more player friendly. The way it was in the past is you just harvest up all of these legendaries that had really good rolls, so you could then extract their aspect onto another bit of gear. But that was a humongous pain in the ass, because oh man, stash space, all that stuff, the total balls. So that's a way, way, way better system. Okay, but that's systems. What else is going on? Well, look, there have been changes to itemization. There have been changes to stats. There are, I forget the name of them, but you can have affixes that themselves basically get a god roll and they get like 150% multiplier or something. But in terms of content, the big thing is the rework of Helltides. Now, Helltides basically, they appear in a section of the world, and in the old system, you just kill some dudes, get some cinders, open some chests, job done. This new version of Helltides is, honestly, it's way more fun. It's way more fast-paced. As you kill guys, you basically fill up a threat bar. Imagine GTA, and the more that you increase your wanted rating, more bad guys come at you. Just that, I suppose, in this version, I don't know, somehow you kill the boss at the end and your wanted rating goes away. But basically, it's kind of like this threat system. If you die, it gets wiped. I just think it's good. You can just be running around the zone and suddenly a big, like, hell sandworm thing just like bursts out of the ground and a bunch of dudes flow out of it. So there's that. Now, when you're doing all of this stuff, you can get these hearts. And if you put 3 hearts into 3 different pedestal things, it summons in a boss. Obviously, it could kill you, but realistically speaking, this is done in a big open world Zerg. And this is absolutely one of those times where D4 being a kind of hybrid multiplayer experience actually really does work in its favor. When you're in a Helltide and there's just a load of people and everyone's just melting bosses and doing all that together, it honestly does feel pretty good. The other thing that works in with that is the Iron Wolves. They are a faction of like mercenary people, and the way it works with them is as you do stuff in the Helltides, you'll get more reputation with them. As you get reputation with them, you get more rewards, big, very, well, rewarding rewards. They just explode in loot. You can get some uniques and stuff like that from it. So you get that, and that's pretty much what's going on there. Now, there is another new feature that is called the Pit, and the Pit essentially is like Greater Rifts. It's a thing that is unlocked at level 100 once you've done a tier 46, I believe, Nightmare Dungeon, which I haven't done. I'm only level 54, so with that, I just want to talk about my experience of this. So, for me, the core gameplay of D4 still does feel great. Whenever you get a decent build, you have gear that supports that, it can actually be quite fun. So I'm playing a charge barbarian, and one bit of my gear means that whenever I charge, a whole bunch of ancestor spirits also charge with me, meaning that instead of one charge, the entire screen gets deleted. That's pretty fun. Whenever I use my shout abilities, little whirlwinds fly out everywhere. Just overall, strong power fantasy. The combat feels like meaty and explosive. The sound design is really strong. And a lot of those just good things that Diablo does, they're still good. It feels good to kill enemies. They explode in satisfying, meaty, mulchy ways. So that's good. The aspect system feels way better to play around. I don't feel like I am sitting there worrying and fretting about all my gear. A lot of the time I return to the blacksmith and I just fucking delete everything in my inventory because ultimately I know that those aspects are being saved and what I want is the crafting resources. The other thing then is, so the Tree of Whispers, the things that you have to do for the tree, those will be active inside a Helltide. So while you're doing a Helltide, right? So, going to farm up those boss kills, get lots of threat, kill loads of dudes, get your Iron Wolves rep, and also open up, or, earn cinders to open up the chests. While you're doing that, you'll also be completing objectives within the Whisper, like helping out Iron Wolf guards, destroying Hellspawn buildings, that kind of thing. So it just does that good thing where all of your progress overlaps. So you might have 2 Iron Wolves boxes of rewards, a whole Whisper, Tree of Whispers thing to turn in, and a lot of gear from a Helltide. And that actually does feel quite good. So, that's good. And also, my god, is it fast. This is really, it seems to be the way to level. And it seems like Blizzard have entirely, that they support that this isn't some sort of exploit thing. Like, in a handful of hours, I'm at level 54. And you level so much faster than before. Before, to me, it would feel like maybe 50 hours, 60 hours, 70 hours, 80 hours, I don't know, some crazy amount of time to hit max level, to start doing the real harder stuff. And that just bloody sucked, man. There's a lot of people and they didn't have a problem with that because they were hyper farming things in a group of 4 and maximizing their XP. And that's just not the way that I want to play a game like D4. The way I want to play a game like D4, to be completely honest with you, is on the couch, on the PS5, probably a bit baked, listening to some I don't know, documentary about the First World War. Maybe that says more about me, but that just sort of like, screw it, man. I am not in the mood for big brain times. I'm just going to chill. The whole Helltide gameplay loop works real well for that. And yeah, just like advancing my gear, looking at different builds and that kind of thing. I think it really is strong. Now, you still do have so much gear thrown at you that it feels ridiculous. I only pick up legendaries now. You might feel like you want to pick up rares either to sell them or to like break them down for crafting resources. But if I was doing that, I'd be town portaling every 5 minutes. I really think that they just need to go, screw it. You have a far larger, just double my inventory space or something. It just doesn't really feel enough. But look, the gameplay loop going on with the Helltides and the faster leveling basically means that the inherent strengths of this game are shining. That is coming along with them having, I think, a more, fuck it, we'll just let things be powerful take on balance, which is obviously a bit different from the nerfs of Season 1. And it just means that I feel like this is what D4 is supposed to feel like. This is D4 with, honestly, for some reason in my head, it just feels a bit more D3 in terms of its pacing. To me, that is really good. It's quite funny because whenever the guys were looking back at old thumbnails from a year ago, just to sort of see how we positioned our Diablo content on YouTube, they did find one. It was about Path of Exile 2. And the video basically, I think the title was like, Diablo has 1 year to get ready. And it's real funny because this is actually happening a year after we released that video. The thing that has changed though, I mean, number one, yes, D4, and in a positive way. The other thing that has changed is Path of Exile 2 got delayed a bit. So they still have time. And it does mean that whenever Blizzard decides to, launch the new expansion for D4, it will be on a far, far more healthy baseline. Now, that being said, there are still negative aspects to this game, and I'm especially thinking about the Battle Pass, and I'm thinking about the store. If you want to look cool in D4, you gotta use the store. Like, there is some cool stuff otherwise, but like even thinking about the free stuff on the Battle Pass, here's what the free set looks like. And I mean, like, dude, it's just a sort of goofy looking dress. I mean, look, I've got nothing against that as clothes, but maybe that is not what I want out of my big barbarian who is absolutely on all the gear imaginable. That's how I think about that dude, and I do not think that this gear resonates with him. It seems that they're almost giving like low fantasy, medium fantasy streetwear as their free stuff in the Battle Pass, but then the paid stuff in the Battle Pass looks actually friggin' awesome. I mean, there's even these horse armors that you get at the end of the current Battle Pass. They look sick. I mean, you can be going around in your big, like, ghostly angelic horse with his ghostly angelic armor, and it honestly looks absolutely flippin' stunning. But, like, come on, dude. That's only paid. I just don't feel like it's working, really. And I guess there's another game that I think about whenever we sort of come to the topic of battle passes, and it is Helldivers 2. Now, Helldivers 2 is probably going to run into a problem where every single month they do a new war bond, that's it, and that's got a bunch of new guns and things, and they're having struggles like keeping those guns differentiated from each other and keeping them balanced. The core thing, though, is people are less pissed because if they are going out there defending democracy enough, they're getting lots of that premium currency. And maybe because they've been able to get a few cosmetics with the premium currency that they've earned, they feel more okay buying the Battle Pass equivalent. Well, here in D4, it's none of that. I really think that they should actually just start letting you get platinum. Put some platinum on the seasonal, whatever it's called, the seasonal chapter thing. That's not the Battle Pass. Yeah, platinum in the Battle Pass, sure. But I just think I don't know, maybe for key milestones, like if you defeat like the big Uber boss or something, give people some platinum. I don't know. I mean, it is literally me saying, hey, Blizzard, give people shit away for free. But I think that even from a cynical business perspective, if you give shit away for free, by which I mean players can earn it by playing the goddamn video game, well, that could actually help the sense of reward for some of that harder content, but also it increases participation in the economy, which is exactly, I think, what Helldivers 2 has been able to do. So, I still have criticisms. Do I think that this is something you should buy Diablo 4 for? No, I do not. I do think, though, that if you have, like me, a copy of Diablo 4 on Steam or Battle.net or wherever it is, or maybe you'd consider picking it up in Game Pass if you already subscribe to that, I would say, yeah, it's absolutely worth it. I mean, on Game Pass, like especially if you're doing the campaign and all of that stuff in the new season, there's plenty of content there. You'll probably have a good enough time. I don't think you should go buy the game for full price or anything like that. Now, Blizzard did do some sort of like free weekend thing. They did a pretty deep sale as well. I think 50% off, which, to be honest, is not a bad deal. For me, though, I think this is the good foundation that the next expansion will probably build significantly on. So if you're really thinking about a jumping in point, I'd say maybe the expansions may be the time to do that. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I think it's important to do follow-up on stories like this, because if you only criticize, but then you never do follow-up, well, it's a broken system. Because whenever you criticize something, and then it does something based on that criticism that's good, if you don't reward the good action, then you definitely have a problem. So fair play to them, fair play to the devs. They've clearly listened, and a lot of things are just significantly better. The core game feels better, and I mean, my God, the difference in the goddamn horse. Like, I know the horse changes were a while ago, but man, oh, the launch horse felt terrible. The new horse, ridiculous. It's running so ridiculously fast, the way its charges stack up, and it shouldn't be able to turn that quickly. But you know what? It helps me get from A to B faster and with less friction. So for what it's doing, for its job as a video game horse, it's definitely doing it better. Anyway, on that amazing horse bombshell, that is it for today's video. I will see you back tomorrow. Thanks for hanging out, and goodbye.